Hello, this is Mr. Atherall. This video is going to be about Jekyll and Hyde, about chapters 7 and 8. Introduce some ideas, some themes, some quotes that are important to think about to give you something to be thinking about in terms of what you might write about when it comes to the exam. So, chapter 7, first, it's incident at the window. Utterson and Enfield going for a walk. Jekyll is locking himself away. He is scared of what he is becoming as Hyde. He's scared of the damage that he can cause. He's now uncontrollably turning from Jekyll to Hyde, and so he's trying to stay away from society because he doesn't want to cause the harm that he has already caused. But he's particularly affected by the fact that Danvers' crew was murdered. So instant at the window. Utterson and Enfield, they see him, and some interesting quotes in terms of the way they describe him there. So they describe him as like some disconsolate prisoner. So he is trapped. Now he is trapped because he's deliberately trapping himself. Disconsolate, describing his mood, a really interesting adjective in terms of the misery he's feeling. But he is also trapped by the decisions and the choices that he has made in life. He is trapped because he has made the potion and drunk the potion and taken science down this potentially unethical route. So that word prisoner is an interesting simile, but is also symbolically more than just the idea of him feeling a bit trapped inside his house. And then he starts in front of Utterson and Enfield. He starts to feel, I'm about to change. He scarpers before they see him change, but there's a look of abject terror on his face. Suddenly it is the extreme, abject being the most extreme type of terror that you can feel. He is utterly terrified of becoming Hyde. He's utterly terrified of the consequences of what this will happen, and it shows the complete lack of control that just as he's having a chat, he suddenly feels that change coming over him. His look of abject terror affects Utterson and Enfield, froze the very blood of the two gentlemen. They sense inside, their blood senses that something is very wrong here. However, they still are no clearer to the facts of the situation. So there is a sense of a kind of spiritual truth to how terrible this is that they don't understand. It's at a kind of subconscious level. And so the fact that it affects their blood rather than makes them think about stuff is important. And it also describes horror in their eyes. Now, they don't discuss it. The horror is in their eyes rather than in their voices. And again, that is the idea of the respectable Victorian gentleman. There's lots of things that they don't discuss that are taboo subjects that they're not going to bring up. But also the eyes are a place of truth, like the blood inside them. It's a place of where you respond instinctively, and the truth of how you're feeling is there. So there's this incident at the window. It then leads into chapter 8, and chapter 8 is the last night. So this is where Utterson gets a call from Paul, one of Jekyll's servants, and he's worried about his master, and he gets him to come round, and they eventually, after spending some time in his house, break into his laboratory and find him dead. And so lots of interesting quotes in this chapter as well. Lots of pathetic fallacy as this chapter starts. So it was a wild, cold, unseasonable night in March. There's a wildness. There is an untamable stuff going on this night. It's cold. It's evil. It's unseasonable. It shouldn't be happening at this time of year. Or this kind of thing shouldn't be happening. So wild, cold, unseasonable. Three really interesting adjectives to describe the weather. There's pathetic fallacy there that could be discussed in greater detail. There's a pale moon, and the wind had tilted her. So the moon in the sky has been tilted out of the position it should be in by the wind. And so things are not aligned. Things are not natural. The natural order of things has been broken down. Now, both the moon and this pathetic fallacy, they are Gothic conventions of literature. So if you're discussing them, worth referencing that and saying there's a Gothic atmosphere built up by Stevenson here, a sense of uneasiness, a sense of the uncanny, a sense of something spiritual, otherworldly going on at this moment in the story. And Utterson feels, before he's even started in this, starts talking about there being a crushing anticipation of calamity. So he feels kind of destroyed with the anticipation that things are going to go wrong. Again, that's a kind of spiritual feeling, a sensing deep down that is what he is experiencing. So we've got that coming before the disastrous finding of Jekyll / Hyde dead. And we get some descriptions from Paul, and Paul describes his master as like a monkey in terms of the way he's moving, the way he's sounding. He describes him as screeching, mere animal terror. So again, these ideas link back to things we talked about in the past, things like evolution, about going backwards in the evolutionary thing, which is called atavism. So Hyde is reverting back to this animalistic version of himself. He also described him weeping like a woman. So that's meant to be a simile of weakness. And also, I mean, there's very few female characters in this story. The maid faints. This simile of a woman. There is something in there about Victorian attitudes towards women, which is something that's going to be difficult to talk about in the exam unless you've got a quote like that really links to that idea. And then when they find him, they find the body of a self-destroyer. He has destroyed himself. Now, he's destroyed himself because he's killed himself, but he has destroyed himself also through the decisions that he's made. That's what's destroyed this man, rather than just simply that he's made this decision. So lots of interesting quotes there to think about. I hope that's been helpful. Look out for the video on chapters 9 and 10.